Greetings, 5 subscribers. Well, heck, I recorded this blurb you're about to hear a few moments ago, and as I began to make the video, I had doubts, and so I had to look up some verses in the Bible using the internet, and it was very easy to do. And I found that I was wrong. So I'm going to play the recording that I made earlier, but preface it with the confession that I discovered a major error. Maybe you can see what that error was and is. And greetings, 5 listeners from around the world. This is part 2 of my little spiel on the 13th tribe. There's a bunch of Jews called Ashkenazim from the land of Ashkenaz or something like that. And maybe they're called by some Ashkenazi Jews. A lot of Jews today identify themselves as such, European Jews, and these European Jews tend to have white skin. We don't know the color of the original Israelites 3,000 years ago. We have no idea. Anybody take a photograph of them? Does anybody have a painting of an Israelite 3,000 years ago? So then shut up. But do these Ashkenazim Jews have a homeland in modern Israel is the question. Don Warden says no, they don't, because they're religious Jews and they're not genetic Jews. Well, I happen to know a little bit about the Bible. Whether the Jews believe it or not, the Bible points out that, or the Old Testament points out that the stranger could become an Israelite through conversion. He need not be a genetic Israelite. The religion of Judaism, as the Bible describes it, and some would say, well, I don't go by your Bible. And see how complex and how useless the arguments get if you go the route of Don Warden. But according to my Bible, it is possible to convert to the Jewish religion and become a spiritual Jew. And the covenants made between the original Israelites, between when they stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, and says, yes, we'll do it according to tradition. We'll keep these commandments and all the statutes and all of the rather perplexing and ritualistic do's and don'ts. If I've got time, I'd like to tell you that there's a part there in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. It describes such things as what to do if you find mildew in your house. What to do if you find mildew. Call the priests. Go through a procedure. This is all bound up as part of their contract with God. But because the instructions given by Moses allowed for the inclusion of genetically strange people, strangers, into the community, regardless of whether you're a genetic Jew or a converted Jew, if you have a right to return, now that's the question. If anyone has a right to return, it has nothing to do with genetics. It's of the spirit, and not anything material or physical. So genetic testing wouldn't put this argument to rest. Warden's argument that the 13th tribe is genetically not Jewish is meaningless. He claims, Warden, a Negro, claims that when he walks on the promised land, he feels a tingle and a connection. That tells him he belongs there and he has as much right to take and occupy and own possess and control the Promised Land as a real Jew, and he doesn't recognize the Jews that are there because he claims they're Ashkenazi Jews. So-called Zionists began to make noises about returning to the area of Jerusalem. And after World War II, after suffering the Holocaust and persecution, the British government, a bunch of politicians, made the decision, along with the United Nations, to create a homeland for both the Palestinians of Jewish descent and the Palestinians of Arabic descent. I don't know what deal was made with the Christians. But the deal was, as I understand it, each was to have their own homeland given to them by the UN, along with the cooperation of the British government. The Jews said yes. The Arabs said no. The Jews said yes. The Arabs said no. Jews, whether they be genetic Jews or convert Jews, began to trickle in to the area called Palestine. Some Jews were already there. The Arab League declared war. An alliance of Arabic Muslim countries, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, declared war on these Israelites, these Jews that were invading their homeland. They lost. They tried to exterminate the Jews. The Jews suddenly, quickly threw together an army and barely clung to existence because they were fighting for their lives. The international community offered a homeland to both parties approximately the year 1948. The Jews said yes, and the Arabs said no. And the Jews began to migrate into Palestine, and tensions between Jews and Arabs in the area, which had always been there, were inflamed. And eventually, several Arab countries, collectively known as the Arab League, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and perhaps some others, invaded and attempted to exterminate the Jews. And the Jews were ill prepared to fight such a battle, but they fought hard because they were fighting for their lives, and they won, just barely. So here is the international community, the UN, granting a homeland to both parties. The Arabs said no, the Jews said yes. It was under the control of the British by virtue of the fact that the Ottoman Empire, aligned with Germany, lost World War I. The UN and Britain offered a homeland to the Jews, but made allowances for the Arabs that were there as well. The Arabs said no, and the Jews said yes. And the Arabs declared war, and the Arabs lost. And I guess the Arabs are still at war in that very same war that started in 1948.